Café and Networking Podcast promotes successful business experts. I'm Tom Reaoch, known as the King of Networking, connecting people throughout the world from my podcast studio in Brazil. Today we talk with Julian Treasure, and he's joining us from the beautiful Kirkwall, Scotland. Julian Treasure is founder of The Sound Agency, transforms organizations through the mastery of conscious listening, powerful speaking, and intelligent design of sound in marketing and spaces. So Julian, why are we losing our listening?
Well, first of all, Tom, we don't teach it. Listening and speaking are primal skills. We've been doing that for as long as our species has had language, probably 200,000 years. And yet writing only came along maybe 5,000 years ago, and that's what we teach. We teach reading and writing, not speaking and listening, which to me is crazy because these two skills are absolutely fundamental. They affect your, my, everybody's happiness, effectiveness, and well-being profoundly. We're affected by sound all the time. It changes our bodies, our feelings, our ability to think, and our behavior as well, what we choose, even what we choose to buy. Certainly what we choose to do, how fast we move, how fast we eat, whether we stay in a place or not. Sound is really powerful. And yet organizations don't think about it. Mm-hmm. And we as individuals confuse these really important skills of conscious listening and powerful speaking. We confuse those with capabilities. Like we think listening is the same as hearing. It's not. And speaking, of course, this amazing instrument that we all play, the human voice, has huge power and huge potential. And yet most people never train it, never get coached, never think of it as a skill to develop. It's just, it's just my voice. Well, it's not.
They're just like a musical instrument. If you don't practice, if you don't know how to use it, you can't make music.
Exactly. You wouldn't go on stage in a big auditorium with no practice at all. And yet people stand on stage to give public speeches with no training, no practice, and no concept that there's a skill here to refine not only how you speak. I talk about there's a whole vocal toolbox there of things you can do to improve your voice, but also what you say, designing the right content. These are skills, and they're really important skills.
And this actually comes from hearing your audience and listening to your audience.
Yes, very much so. Because every human being's listening is unique. Because we listen through a set of filters that we develop through our entire lives. So your listening, Tom, is different from mine, and it's different from every single person listening to this. And that's why when you're speaking, it's really important to ask yourself the question, what's the listening I'm speaking into? You're always speaking into a listening, and it's different from one person to another. And even one person or an audience's listening changes through the day. You may have just had great news. You may have had bad news. You may be feeling ill. You may be angry about something. You might have intentions about this conversation or expectations that color your listening. And then, of course, there's all the things you grew up with, the language you learned to speak, the culture you grew up in, your values, attitudes, beliefs, the things you've picked up. All of those things color listening. So it changes from person to person and through the day. And that's why if you want to be a powerful speaker, it's very important to ask the question, what's the listening I'm speaking into?
It also changes over time and the numbers of times you listen. You're also a TED speaker. And what I find, and in podcasting, I'm interviewing you, we're speaking together, we're hearing together, we're listening together. And obviously, part of what I'm hearing and listening is part of the technique of being able to record. I'm not saying I'm not hearing or listening, but what I do after this is posted, I'll be listening again, I'll be hearing again, and several times. And I always find that I've heard something that I didn't hear the first time. I like a TED Speak. If you watch it on YouTube and go back and hear it again, there's always another pickup.
Although recording is a bit of a two-edged sword, you can definitely go back and squeeze more juice from the lemon. On the other hand, knowing that you can record something takes the premium off careful listening in the first place. You know, we've only been able to do this, well, since writing was invented, first of all, and then audio and video recording. So now there's a kind of, oh, I'll check it later on YouTube, it'll be there. So we don't listen in the way that we used to. You know, once upon a time, you sat at the feet of your teacher, and if you missed it, you missed it.
You missed it.
And yeah, so that's no longer true. So technology in many ways is not helping our listening right now, although I do think that's about to change with AI. We're going to be starting to talk to machines, the internet, and so forth, and listen to them talking to us intelligently, not, you know, in the dumb way that we've been used to with the agents that we've had so far, but really intelligent conversations, more like Jarvis from Iron Man, you know, where we actually don't have to look at a screen and don't have to take our fingers up when we're asking questions or finding information or whatever it might be. Now, that's going to change everything. So I think we have a renaissance in speaking and listening about to happen in the next 5 years, max. And it's going to change everything when it's powered by AI.
Could we say that hearing is passive and listening is active?
You could say that, yes. Hearing is just a capability. I mean, you hear everything around you. It's a primary warning sense because you can hear what's behind you, of course. And so it's pretty important, and it hits us very deep, very fast. You know, if there's a noise behind you, you will have a reaction, a fight-flight reaction, and spin round. There's nothing you can do about those responses. It happens far faster than we process vision. However, hearing is one thing. Listening is where you select things to pay attention to, and then you make them mean something. So my definition of listening is making meaning from sound.
Well, how does that fit in marketing in spaces?
Well, of course, most organizations are oblivious to the fact they make sound at all. They focus entirely on the visual. It's like 80% of marketing money is spent on how things look. Well, sound affects us too. And if you're running a retail premises or a shopping mall or a hotel or anything hospitality like a restaurant, a bar, the sound you make absolutely affects how long people stay in that space, what they choose to do, and how much they enjoy the experience. So it's all about customer experience in 5 senses, to be fair, not just the arts, but all 5 are happening all the time. That's how we experience the world. So it's multi-sensory customer experience. And what's important is to make sure that the sound is congruent with the visuals. Now, that is so often not the case. How many times has anybody listening to this been in a place which looks amazing, but because architects don't think about sound very much, it's resonant, it's noisy, it's chaotic, there's terrible music on, which is inappropriate, excuse me, for the band that's behind the space. You know, this kind of stuff is just mindless, and it really damages sales. And I only have to remind you of telephone sound, Tom. Press 1 for this, press 2 for that. The biggest lie in the world, we're experiencing higher than normal call volumes. All that stuff is so irritating.
It really is.
And quite often with many brands, that's the only interface we have with them on the telephone or in a conversation like that with a machine that's not listening to us. So sound affects brand affinity, sales, customer loyalty, and of course staff productivity, because the biggest complaint in modern offices is noise. People can't think. Because all the offices have to be open plan now, don't they? So you've got to listen to the conversations around you while you're trying to write or do numbers or whatever it may be. Kind of okay for collaboration, terrible for concentration or solo working.
Very good. Well, Julian, how can our listeners, and they are listeners, find you to listen more and even see you?
Well, I have 5 TED Talks, which they are very welcome to see on TED.com. And my own website is juliantreasure.com, which also has details of my speaking, my coaching, my consultancy, and the books I've written. So I'd love to see anybody there and have a conversation.
Very good. Well, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
And again, to our listeners, you can find more information. It's Julian Treasure. It's Julian Treasure, Treasure. Find him on LinkedIn as well as juliantreasure.com. Café Networking is brought to us by Focus MI Market Intelligence, an agricultural market research specialist in Brazil. More information about them at focusmi.com. Talk to Tom, talk to the world. Thanks for listening. Until the next time here at Café and Networking Podcast.